Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back going to talk about Holy versus Disc, what to play in Tomb of Sargeras. Alright, starting it off, of course, Warcraft logs and just general common sense, you could play whatever you like. If you only want to play one, you hate the other, totally fine. Play what you want, great. But this patch is given like a tremendous opportunity to actually switch hit pretty comfortably. Choosing Holy, choosing Disc, depending on what the fight is. And I kind of just want to talk about, what I think of as I'm going through the fight, besides Twitch chat yelling at me to play one spec over another. Getting into it, the fights in Tomb are generally pretty long as a whole. The majority of the later fights and stuff like that are generally pretty long, pretty healing intensive, and for a lot of them you kind of have the option of bringing 4 or 5 healers, depending on which fight that you're going to be facing. So, first and foremost, I always kind of look at Holy as kind of my old standby. How comfortable am I going to be on this fight as Holy? And generally, what I kind of look for is how easy is it to use Sanctify, because Sanctify will generally just try to be your bread and butter, and with your 4-piece, you're just using your Sanctifies as often as you possibly can. The mana efficiency of it, the raw healing that you're getting out of it, just makes it such a huge deal to get really good Sanctifies on a consistent basis. The healing that you're getting for the mana cost is just miles better than Prayer of Healing. So if you're having a lot of struggles using Sanctifies effectively and you have to lean more on Prayer of Healings, then it's really going to be draining your mana over the course of the fight, And as you're trying to whip all your melee to actually move together, it generally makes life a lot harder if they don't. So something to kind of keep in mind, the more spread the fights are and the more movement that happens during the damage feels quite a bit more uncomfortable as Holy, because, if there's, after you get your Sanctify off, well, you don't really have much in the way of instant casts, because Renew is garbage, and you're just letting Prayer of Mending do all the renewing for you. So being able to stand still, plant your feet, cast Flash Heals, cast Prayer of Healings, or whatever you need to be doing. I've been using lots and lots of Binding Heal lately, in a lot of my builds, even after the changes have gone, and the bug fixes has gone through for Binding Heal. So I'm finding myself just trying to be as turrety as possible, so the more the movement that's going on, the more annoying it is for you to get into the correct position to kind of get people topped off. Disc on the flip side, however, you aren't too worried about the movement as long as it's happening as damage is happening, right? So movement as damage happens, a good example of this is like Unbound Chaos on Fallen Avatar. That's totally fine for Disc, because guess what? You can already apply your atonements in advance, you're already prepped and ready to go, hit a penance, by the time your penance channel finishes, you're basically done running all over the place and stuff like that. You'll just cast a penance, maybe refresh a powered shield, and then you're set. Then you're able to, use any kind of smites you need to if anybody's still taking any kind of damage, and then you're all good, and you don't have to worry about stuff. But if you're playing Holy for that, you can maybe get a Sanctify cast off if everyone's moving together, and you're able to hit a couple targets. But after that, you're kind of moving, you're waiting to actually get this chance to stand still, and then you have to stand still and start topping people off after that, A different kind of movement that's also kind of annoying, but for the different specs, for Disc is very annoying if there is a lot of movement required before the damage happens. So Mistress Sazine is a good example. I actually played Disc for our first Mistress kill because we were 5 healing it, and I felt like it was a lot more consistent when I actually had a little bit of extra damage going. Usually the extra damage is like 350k, which is not insignificant in the slightest. So it felt really good being able to add the damage there, and it felt very good being able to have, say, atonements on targets, shields on targets. I actually had a better personal because Fade was up just about every Hydra shot or every other Hydra shot. So those kind of combined to be great pros, but what really screwed with me and really drove me crazy was the movement that was required for you before the damage even goes out. So I was trying to dedicate both my powered Radiance charges just about every single time to the Hydra shots. Well, when you have to be running all over the place, when you have to be fighting against the maw that's sucking you in, when you have to be moving to the right Hydra shot every single time, and it's always across the room from you, those things got pretty annoying to be able to properly set up your atonements in advance. And not saying it's a bad fight, but it's one of those mechanics you kind of have to look at and see, and just kind of say to yourself, how comfortable am I really being on this fight, and is it helping me? Do I feel like I'm able to deal with this, or is it kind of hurting my healing? Is it hurting, the healing of the overall team as a result? So something to kind of consider. Whereas the pros, and this is what kind of made my decision for me for playing Holy or Disc on Mr. Sazine, was the pros seem to outweigh the cons, where I'm saying I do have powered shield, which is amazing, helps everybody soak all the Hydra shots. I do have the damage reduction from Leanness' Reward, which is the new artifact trait, which just basically provides damage reduction for everybody that has Atonement on them. You know, and I'm able to have shields, and I'm able to have a better personal. All these kind of things kind of combine where I'm saying, you know what, huge pain, but I can get through this, you know. But if you're not quite feeling comfortable with this, then you kind of have to look at, you know, playing whatever you are most comfortable with on progression, right? This kind of goes the same way for, you know, how much movement is required over the course of the fight, so you can be casting Divine Hymn, you know, how close together everybody can be. We're doing Mythic Fallen Avatar progression right now, and everyone's super spread out, and I feel really powerful as Disc. And I'm saying to myself, well, yeah, it's fine if everyone's all spread out, because I'm able to have, you know, 2 targets with Purge the Wicked on them. I'm able to have shields on everybody that's soaking the Touch of Sargeras. I'm able to have the damage reduction, even if there is a healing debuff over the course of the fight that also affects shields over the course of the fight on Mythic Avatar. I'm still able to have damage reduction on top of this. You know, Barrier's still pretty good because I'm able to get everybody moving into a central location, and I'm able to have such a strong benefit. Now, these are a lot of positives for Disc, but on the flip side, with Holy, you're getting such powerful value out of Binding Heal over the course of long fights, and I'm really enjoying it more and more now. You know, it kind of started with Mythic Sisters when Binding Heal was still bugged, and I was basically just able to spam Binding Heal like crazy constantly and do insane healing. Well, even after the bug has been fixed, and it's still working properly as intended, previously the bug would just make it so that it would sometimes not heal you, and it would sometimes not heal your target, so it would be like a 3-person Vivify and just be doing insane healing. Well, even after the fix, it's still really good, because the only target that's having high overheal is basically going to be yourself. And if you're able to ditch, say, Pride As, and you're able to run with, like, Velen's Legendary Legs, then you have this opportunity in front of you where you're taking reasonable amounts of damage. You know, you're able to constantly have healing on you through Binding Heal, and you're able to replace Flash Heals and Prayer of Healings in many situations with more Binding Heal. And Binding Heal creates such a strong mana efficiency that over the course of long fights that have consistent damage, you're able to kind of win via attrition, where all the other healers are kind of having to pace themselves more and more as you're going deeper and deeper into a fight, and you're just still able to cast lots of Binding Heal. And this healing that it will put out is just so mana efficient that you're able to kind of sustain yourself over 7-8 minute fights. That, you know, it's just a really easy way to win, I find. So it started with Mythic Sisters, and even after the bug fix, I've still been using Binding Heal in that fight, and from playing Holy and Disc on that fight, it definitely feels way more comfortable with mana. You know, I'm still running Promises because the Owl Trinket won't drop for me, and I'm still feeling way more comfortable playing Holy with no mana trinkets than playing Disc with one, you know. And that's something that's, you know, part of experience, part of gameplay, but it's also, you know, how you kind of have to pace yourself, because if there's constant damage going out with Disc, you're not going to be able to have all these atonements out for a 7 or 8 minute fight without crazy external mana mechanics, right? You have to pick and choose where you're going to be putting all your healing, and then you have to just scrunch all your healing into these big burst windows, which can work, which works really well. But if that's something that you're, you know, not super interested in, or, you know, may not be what your healing group requires, then you might say, okay, well, maybe let me try Binding Heal, let me go on Binding Heal for these longer fights, and let me sustain my mana for long periods of time so that if an emergency strikes, I'm able to use my most expensive abilities, I'm instantly able to kind of get people topped off, and I'm able to keep on handling that, you know. By replacing some Flash Heals, some Prayer of Healings and stuff like that with Binding Heal, what you're doing is you're able to basically substitute less mana efficient abilities that do have Serendipity interaction for a Serendipity spell that actually has more efficiency. So the healing that you're getting out of it for the cost is very efficient, and then you're funneling all your Serendipity procs into your Holy Words, which are just way more efficient than anything else that Holy Priest really has. You know, the amount of healing that you're getting for the price you have to pay is insanely high. So as a result of this, you're able to just have your most efficient abilities be the ones that you're casting the most. Now, if somebody's absolutely taking lots of damage, you're going to Flash Heal them. If the entire group's taking lots of damage, you're going to use Prayer of Healing, you know. You're not going to sacrifice, you know, your reactivity or anything like that just for the sake of mana efficiency. But when you're kind of in between those areas where someone's taking damage but they're not dying, you know, or when the group has a little bit of damage out on them, you kind of fill all that in with Binding Heal. And over the course of a fight, you're able to just be constantly chugging along and get through it without a doubt. So, you know, those fights I really keep on looking at to see how valuable is it for me to go Holy for this. How much will I have to be sustaining my mana? These are just some of my thoughts on why I picked Holy, why I picked Dist on certain fights. And generally speaking, some of the things that you can kind of carry forward with you as you're looking at how you're going to play certain fights in Mythic Tomb. So far, we're 7 and 9 Mythic, and I played both specs for all the fights so far except for Mythic Maiden. Mythic Maiden was one where I'm probably going to do it this coming week, but so far I just felt like there was so much consistent damage happening, and it was kind of like the situation I highlighted where I really just wanted to be constantly able to heal and constantly be able to put forth the most healing possible, So that was one big thing for me, and that's what kind of just stood out for me as to what I would be playing there. But yeah, all the specs, of course, both specs are perfectly viable to be playing. Choose what you're most comfortable with for progression purposes, depending on what the fight is going to be bringing to you. And, if you're not comfortable with one spec at all, then just start working on it, Start working on it, start practicing with it, and, start working on it on some of your easier fights and stuff like that so you get more comfortable, especially with Disc as you're getting better and better at preempting the damage and, recognizing the damage is going to be happening, all right? So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys found this helpful of just, some of my thoughts on where I'll choose Holy, where I'll choose Disc, and, hopefully you guys will give it a shot and start switch hitting and stuff like that, playing both specs for Tomb of Sargeras. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoy it, and I'll catch you all next time.